thank you, Rebecca, and thank you also to Rena. All your efforts to drive engagement with high school students and younger make a better pipeline for me to hire from tomorrow. So thank you very much for that. About me, I'm at Box. If you're not familiar with Box, we make it very easy for enterprises to manage their content and collaborate with each other. We're replacing a lot of legacy tools that these companies had to use for security reasons with a really high security model built in the cloud. I'm here to talk about a near and dear topic to me, and that is moving into engineering leadership. And why is this topic so near and dear to me? Well, I have to tell you my story in order to tell you that. So I ended up declaring computer science at Stanford a little bit accidentally. If I didn't declare accidentally, I definitely stayed in because the chair of the department wouldn't let me out. He's like, we got one, and she is going to stay here. So I got through those early classes. Even though I wanted to quit several times, there I was at the end, a computer science diploma, and I got swept up in the Silicon Valley entrepreneurship craze. So a couple of friends of mine and I started a company. We ended up taking a seed round of funding from DFJ 3 months before I graduated. Now talk about a stressful final quarter at college. We're starting this company, we're sitting on, millions of dollars in the bank, never even seen that much money, and trying to figure out how we're going to get the right level of market traction to make our company successful. We're also fighting the market. This was 2008, 2009. This was not a nice time to be a startup. But we did it. We ran the company for about a year and a half. We built technology that allowed you to see a document in your browser, so like a Word doc or a PowerPoint. Now we can do that every day, but at that time it just was not available. Turns out the up-and-coming company Box really needed that technology. So we got a call from Aaron and Dylan, the founders, one day, and we came in and we started talking, and we decided that we were going to have Box acquire us so that we could power their document viewing. All right, so I'm joining Box. I'm the 7th engineer at Box. And I had to learn to go from being an entrepreneur to being an individual contributor engineer at Box. What I did well was lead groups of teams. So when we wanted a JavaScript style guide, we had a JavaScript style guide because I got all my buddies together and we made one. And so my boss corners me one day and says, Kimber, do you want to be an engineering manager? Our team is growing and we need one. Looked back at him, I said, no. That sounds a lot like middle manager, and I hear that's really a weird thing to be. Maybe you get stuck there forever, and you don't actually get to be a leader because you're this manager person. Went home, thought about it, changed my mind, came back, said I'm stuck here in my golden handcuffs anyway, might as well give it a shot. And I make possibly the best decision of my life, and I move into this management spot. And what was so cool about that is this is the time Box's engineering group is growing and growing aggressively. So I had 4 people on my team, and then I had 20 people on my team, and then I had 40 people on my team, and I was bringing up new managers, and then I had 60 people on my team. And I had to learn to scale incredibly quickly. And I had to learn a lot of the lessons that I want to share with you guys the hard way. I also had the opportunity to bring about 8 people from my team and other teams at Box into engineering leadership, both managerial and technical. I'll get to the distinction in a second. But I was able to bring these people into engineering leadership, and you know the great part? 3 of those 8 people were women. And so now my management team at Box is actually half women, which is pretty cool. All right. So what I'm going to share today is some common themes on the path to engineering leadership. Things that if you know them will help you as you decide what you're going to do. So the first is to aim clearly. There's the old and kind of cliched statement that if you don't know what you're going for, how do you get there? It's true, but it's especially true in the engineering world. And here's why. What I have up here is, it's not exactly what Box does, but it's close. It's a pretty general graph of how people get promoted through an engineering organization of any size at all. And so what you can see at the top is the management track. So you might start out as a software engineer, do what I did, say, hey, maybe this management thing would be pretty cool, and move on up, and all of a sudden you're VP of engineering. It doesn't quite work like that. There's a second row that's same prestige. In fact, at Box, it's actually probably more prestigious than going up the management track, which is the technical track. And so these are your elite technical contributors. Turns out the sort of horizontal alignment is on purpose. Roughly, if you are a very high-level engineer, you are paid the same, you're valued the same as your very top engineering leadership. This is pretty standard. At the bottom, I just have another track that sometimes people will use if you're specializing in design or architecture. To make this more confusing, I have not even included product or program management. And those are often tracks that engineers will go down as well. So when I say aim clearly, I don't mean that you have to know what you want to do, but I'm saying that you should probably pick one at a time. Pick one you want to go to, decide what it is. If you want to change your mind, fine, but at least you're doing all the right things to get you in that direction. Because what it takes to become a VP of engineering is different from what it takes to become a principal architect, and that's all very different from what it takes to move into product management. All right, so you got to figure out what you want to do. Now, it's a really common thing that my direct reports will come to me and say, I don't know what I want to do. I haven't decided yet. And that's fine. That's my job, to have a conversation with them about what they want to do with their future. The problem comes when they don't follow up with me and say a couple weeks later, actually, I decided I want to go down the technical track. Can you help me find the right opportunities to do so? If they spend forever sort of straddled between the technical track and the managerial track, not only can I not help them, if they try to get promoted to one of these two sides, they won't have been doing the right thing. So the point of this is pick where you're going to go, change it when you want to change it, but always have sort of a singular destination. All right, next, be at the right place at the right time. I happen to use a picture of Box. You could use a picture of any of a handful of companies. What's important here is not that Box was small when I joined, but rather that Box was growing extremely quickly. So what do you guys think is the right profile to join? Let's say you want to become an engineering manager, and you're exhibiting leadership as a software engineer. What's kind of the best company to go to? Anybody have any ideas? No ideas? Something rapidly growing. More specifically, you're going to be looking for teams that are hitting 8, 10 people, that are hiring very aggressively, because we all want to promote from inside. And so if we can hire you as a software engineer and you start to show great leadership, we want to promote you. Not only do we want to, we need to. We actually have this desperate need for leaders. And that's a very different environment than being in a company where the spot of manager of your team is filled and you don't get to move up until that person quits or gets promoted or whatever else. You don't want to be in that situation. So there's a little bit of strategic alignment with the company in the phase of your career based on what it is that you're aiming for. Do the job before you have it. Our cute little doctor friend here is a good example. But I want to tell you a story. When I was in high school, I went out for the track team. I had been injured the year before in 8th grade track, so I didn't have a reputation for being very fast or for being a great runner in high school. And when the coach first came out with the roster for the team, I looked down the varsity side, and I looked for my name. I kept looking for my name. I kept looking for my name. And my name was not on that side. And I looked over on the JV side, and my heart sinks, and I'm a junior varsity runner in like a 100-meter dash, which is code for, we don't know what you do, but you're not very fast. I get to looking at the varsity side again, though, and there's an opening. And that opening is in the 400-meter hurdles. Yeah, that is a great face right over there. 400-meter hurdles has the scariest reputation of, I think, any race in at least Iowa high school girls track. It's killer. You're sprinting the whole time, jumping over things. You turn green at the end. It's awful. But I really wanted to run varsity track. So I went to my coach and I said, hey, coach, I noticed there's a spot here. Could I take it? She's like, if you want to, okay. So I do it, and I run the race, and I almost die, and I don't do particularly well. But the next time the roster comes out, guess whose name is next to 400-meter hurdles in the varsity column? Mine. Got progressively better over the course of the season, and the most important thing is that I lettered in varsity high school track my freshman year. I'm a little competitive, so this was very important to me. And what was cool about that was that what I had done is found a way to do the job before I had it. I did the job before I was officially a member of the high school track team. So there's this common misperception that you can't do this in leadership, especially on the management track. What are you going to do? Take your peer, sit across on a table, and deliver an annual review? I wouldn't recommend it. So you can't deliver an annual review. But if you aren't able to enable people to do better work, if you're not able to solve problems that affect the entire team, and if you're not able to get things done when you promise to get them done without authority, you're never going to be able to do those things with authority. In fact, the best leaders I've ever come upon rarely touch their authority. They rely on the influence that they learned before they officially had the role to get the job done. So do that. Observe someone who's doing the job that you want. See what they do. See what problems they're trying to solve. Solve problems that are above your level. Find your 400-meter hurdles and get yourself in the race. All right, you're doing the job beforehand. What else is important? Well, there's this constant tension, I think, with engineers. Does someone want to raise your hand and give me what I mean by leverage? Anybody? Over there?
Way you can use to position yourself in a situation to get a more positive outcome.
More positive outcome is the most important part of that definition. So how to focus on the things that have the highest impact for sort of the littlest amount of work. And so when we're talking to people who are moving into leadership, what we always ask them to do is think about focusing their time on high leverage activities. This is what you do if you hire a house cleaner to clean your house so that you can spend more time working on your job or taking care of your kids. So high leverage activities are very important if you want to move up. At the same time, there's a trap on the other end of the spectrum where you get so focused on high leverage activities that you forget that sometimes it's the little things that makes the company the most successful. So the phrase I like to use to capture this is think high leverage, but be willing to take out the trash. When I was at Increo, we didn't have someone to take out the trash for a while. So, you know, the little bitty like IKEA trash cans we had in our office started to fill up quite far with M&M wrappers and Diet Dr. Pepper bottles. And eventually I took out the trash because somebody had to do it or nobody would want to come to work every day. And so that's really the kind of thing you need to focus on. When you have an opportunity to serve your team, you take it. Now, it's probably the most important here is that your mantra should be, what is best for the business over the long term? Did you have a question?
Yes. Could you give us examples of high leverage activities?
It's a good question. So a high leverage activity might be something like, instead of personally deciding that you like a new JavaScript style and fixing a file to include that JavaScript file, you might get a group of people together to think about what should be the new JavaScript style for everything, and enable all of them to be working on the same thing at the same time. It's the difference between sort of fixing a little bug and introducing a framework that removes all instances of that bug. Sometimes fixing the little bug is the choice. More often than not, removing all future instances of the bug is the right choice. So the way to really think about it is what is going to be best for your company in the long term. And if you can make decisions according to that, and sometimes those decisions involve taking out the trash, and sometimes those decisions involve working on the sexiest, highest leverage architecture project there is, you're going in the right direction. Right. Last but not least, welcome feedback. So you know that feeling when somebody gets to the areas for improvement section? Your heart sinks, starts beating faster, you're really nervous. What are they gonna say? You go into like fight or flight mode. You even like the person sitting across the table from you, and it's scary. Getting feedback of any time is extremely scary. It's exposing our flaws and our vulnerabilities. And it can be very easy when you get feedback to shut down, to agree with it, to disagree with it, to fight back about it. Turns out none of those are the appropriate response for getting more feedback. What feedback gives you is the ability to improve. And the more you move up in your career, the more you rely upon feedback to tell you how to improve, because there's not a set of rules. In my job right now, there's like, measure of success is how well is your team doing? Well, that's not like, did I write more code or less code? That's a really hard thing to define. So the way that I improve is by getting feedback. Now, the way you get more feedback is to respond to feedback as follows. Thank you. And that's it. So what you want to do is you want to be the person that no matter what, when someone comes to you with feedback, you say thank you, you attempt to implement it, and you move on. And that's the kind of thing that has people come to you and tell you about things that might be your blind spots and might be your limiting factors in the future. So as much as your heart starts to sink and as much as your stomach gets tight, just remember, thank you. It's all you have to say. Now, the other side of welcoming feedback is putting that feedback to use. So, obviously, if you're defensive when you get feedback, people are going to stop coming to you with feedback. But if you don't ever implement any of the feedback that you receive, people also will be a little bit less willing to come to you with that feedback. So one of my favorite strategies on implementing the feedback you receive, especially with a group of people, is called feed forward. And it's Marshall Goldsmith's concept from his book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he spends a lot of time talking about, saying thank you when you get feedback, but taking the team of people you work with, including your boss, and engaging them in helping you get better. So what feed forward is you get some feedback, you decide about something you want to work on. Let's say you want to become a better listener. So you go to all of the people that you work with and you say, I'm trying to be a better listener. Do you have ideas for how I might be a better listener? Then they give you an idea, and how do you respond? Thank you, excellent. You say thank you. Take it or leave it, implement it or don't. But the benefit of this is that your team, your boss, the people you work with, know that you're aiming for improvement in this way. Okay? So it can be really hard to deal with feedback, especially when it comes from your boss or your peers and it's not fair. But it's so important that you develop a relationship or a reputation as someone who welcomes feedback in order to continue to move up in your career. Last but not least, your job's going to change. In the words of the Red Queen, you have to do more and more just to stay in the same place. And this is true. When I went from being an entrepreneur to being an individual contributor developer, I suddenly had to learn how to code with a whole group of people. And then when I went from being a developer to being a manager, all of a sudden, my success was not based on how well I did. I could do the coolest project ever. It was based on how well my team did. And then when I moved to managing managers, all of a sudden, how my team did was a given. That had to be successful. my success was based on the type of change that I could bring to the entire organization. In fact, my underlying advice for all of this is that at any given time, consider yourself your boss's secret partner. Like right now, I'm the co-VP of engineering, but nobody knows. And then you're solving the types of problems that will get you to the next level. So as you move up in your career, success will increasingly be about your ability to find the problems and then solve it. All right, so we're going to move to questions here. You got my 5 pieces of advice. If you'd like to connect with me at any point, at Kimber_Lockhart. Might take me a few days. I'm not really into Twitter. My co-founder now works at Twitter, so he made me do it. In any case, please take some time, ask me a question. I'm happy to share any more about any of these things or some examples of how I've seen these topics be really useful for the people that are on my team. Thank you, guys. Yes. Do we have a, oh, there it is.
Thank you for the great presentation. So you kind of mentioned sometimes we need to pick a route. What if there's 2 routes to pick? How would we go? Let's say like manager, like engineer manager and program manager or product management. So haven't done none of those and kind of trying to decide which one I'm better at. How would I pick it?
Do you do, yes. She would like to know if there are 2 routes, say engineering program manager and, what was the other one, engineering manager?
Product management.
Product manager. Okay, so if there's several different similar routes, how do you pick? I can't answer that for you because that's a very personal question, but do your due diligence and settle on one for now. Set like a calendar reminder 6 months in the future to see if you'd like to change your mind. And then don't worry about it and do everything you possibly can to hit the route that you picked at this time. Because the people that are most successful are not really the ones who are, from what I've seen, are not really the ones who are, absolutely sure, but they're the ones who can pick enough so that they do the right things to get to the level where they can decide whether they like it. It's much easier to move horizontally than it is to move sort of up in the world.
My question to you is, what were some of the obstacles or the most important obstacle you had to face to be where you are now, and how did you overcome it?
Question is, what are the most important obstacles I had to face to get where I am now, and how did I overcome it? Life is a series of obstacles, right? But one I will call out is learning how to manage managers, learning how to promote your first manager. That was actually extremely difficult. There's not a rule book on how to find your first manager. And so what I did at that time is I went to my boss, I went to some industry connections that I had, and I said, I would like to meet someone who has been through exactly the same thing I'm going through, company hypergrowth, in a different company about 3 years ago. Who do you know? Of course, they introduced me to all women, but these are fantastic women. And they took me through how you hire your first manager. They took me through how you evaluate whether or not that's working. And they really helped me to get to that next stage of my career. So when you hit some of these obstacles, it's a good time to say, I need to learn as much as I can. And you might learn from books, you might learn from mentors, but don't hesitate to reach out for introductions to people who have done exactly what it is that you want to do.
Thank you. So why be an engineering leader?
It's a good question. You don't have to be. But being an engineering leader, either a technical leader or a management style leader, gives you more impact than you can have as an individual. So there is nothing I like more than seeing a team that I've built, people that I've put together, that are more successful than the sum of their parts. It fulfills me. And so if it's not the kind of thing that you like doing, give it a try, decide you don't like it, that's great. But there's something very special about having more impact, about working with a team, either giving them sort of people leadership or giving them technical direction that you just don't get in as an individual.
So in terms of the leadership and management, do you see any advantages that women have more than men, and how can we leverage that advantages?
It's a good question. Do women have more advantages than men? You know, I think it's a wash. There are some things that have been incredibly beneficial. People like to write about women in computer science, I've found. So I get way more PR than my male counterparts. Kind of cool. But on the other hand, I'll be in discussions and you'll see some of the things that Sheryl Sandberg shares in Lean In, where women are perceived as more emotional or more aggressive than they actually are. I've seen that in the workplace. And ultimately, you are an individual, you are unique, you have strengths, you have weaknesses. Who you are, what your gender is just another dimension of that. And I'd say not worry about it. And if you believe that it will be a wash and that you're just as likely to be as successful as any other person, I think you're more likely to get there.
Hi, Kimber. So my question is, as a junior developer who just get off college, if I kind of want to be a manager in the future, what are the specific steps or like advice I can use? And like, let's say I'm in a relatively big company where there are managers. There are a lot of managers. So what are the things I can do to go to that point? Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you're a junior developer, what kinds of things can you do? Well, one is to get really good at your job. So a lot of moving into leadership is based on being good at what you do now. It's a prerequisite, it's not everything. Another thing that you might do is really observe the behavior of the managers and leaders that you look up to. Another thing you might do is notice where there's problems. Engineers are problem solvers by nature, but so many of us don't take the time to go outside of the code, outside of the project, and see that this process is really broken. I can probably fix it. And it's that level of considering yourself empowered to solve organizational problems that will make you into a person that people start to notice and will start to get you into more and more leadership roles. Any other questions? There we go.
Yeah. In your leadership journey, what is it that you know now that you wish you had known 10 years back?
Most of the things I just shared with you, actually. When I was making this presentation, I said, what do I wish I knew? And it was a lot of those things. The overarching thing I wish I knew, I was in college and I was trying to determine if I wanted to be a product manager or an engineer. Anybody ever wrestled with that? Yeah, tends to be a pretty typical thing, especially in the women in tech circles. And I wish I would have known that engineering leadership, engineering management, becoming a director of engineering, running whole engineering teams, was a viable career path. Because it achieves a lot of what I like in terms of interacting with people and marries it with still being extremely technical. I may not write code every day, but I'm sitting in there, I'm making decisions, I'm asking the hard questions. So I wish that I knew that this career path existed, because I would have saved a whole lot of time wrestling with what else I wanted to do.
Hey, so for someone who's starting out as a software engineer, you tend to actually go on the technical path because you're shielded off from so many things if you just stay this way, and you get to do what you like the most. But with someone with that mindset, what is the one thing that you would say is the brighter side of just moving up onto the management path?
So if you love what you do, I'm not sure I'd be overly concerned about doing something different. That's sort of my guide. At the same time, if you are scared of doing something else, that's your first red flag that maybe you should consider it.
Okay.
And if you live your life according to that, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape.
Right. Thanks.
So you talked a little bit about how it's easier to move horizontally than vertically. But as you climb up those levels of leadership, if at some point you realize that it's not what you want to do, but you know that now at this point you've got teams upon teams resting upon your decision, does it become more difficult in any way to shift and to change like entirely what you want to do if you take that leap and you climb all the way up?
There's sort of two answers that I'll give you. One is that if you have the opportunity to move into management and you want to give it a try, and that's what you've set your aim on, by all means do it. If your company knows what they're doing, they will have a track back out. It's very typical that engineers will think that this is something they want to do and then get into it and either decide they love it or really don't. I have 2 people on my team actually have become managers that I have transitioned back out to individual contributors, not because they were doing a bad job, but because it was clear in our conversations that just was not a fit. They didn't like it, and they weren't as effective as they could have been if they did like it. Now, to your question of moving further up and what you do when you move further up, I think what's really nice about our industry is that opportunities are so plentiful that you can kind of do whatever you want. But it does become harder to make a move when you have a large team. So as you start to have bigger and bigger teams, you have to have more specific plans for what happens if you need to extract yourself from that situation. So that might mean you've been there for 10 years, you want to do something else, it's time for you to move on to your next opportunity. You are measured by how you leave your team. And so leaving your team in great shape is something that follows you as you move on.
You've talked a lot about sort of moving through your career and how things change over time. And 10 years into my career, I'm realizing that I evaluated whether I was doing the right things or whether I wanted to change things a lot more earlier in my career than I do now. And so the question I have is, how often do you think it's healthy to really look at what you're doing and sort of reality check yourself in the direction that you're going as you progress through your career? And how do you change that over time?
So most of these answers have been solely my opinion. This one is perhaps even more so. This is just what I do. I find if I go longer than 6 months, I haven't thought about it enough. If I go less long than 6 months, I drive myself crazy. So I ended up at 6 months. You could try your birthday every year, try New Year's. New Year's is great because you get to set goals and think about your life all at the same time. My favorite holiday. But you know, I do recommend having some frequency that you evaluate what it is you're doing, especially because you can get in a situation where you're not making a move because you're scared of the next move, as opposed to because you're really happy with what you're doing. And really, that's the time to be concerned. If you're happy doing what you're doing, have at it.
Hi. Have you ever in your career have seen like women's not moving up in the hierarchy because people in the management thinks that they are, because she's a woman and she needs a time with her family and she may not be able to give 100% to this job profile? Have you ever come across this situation?
No, not explicitly. Have I ever come across women paying a penalty in moving up in the ladder because they might want to spend more time with their children and their family? Usually I see it more the other way around, where women don't approach the opportunity or don't plan for the opportunity because they're worried about it. And I'm lucky. I work at an extremely sort of thoughtful company, an extremely supportive company of women, and I got to form that from a very early stage. But if you look at my leadership team is half women. In fact, the team that I'm a part of, so the team that sort of reports to the head of engineering is half women. I honestly don't know how that came to be, but it's an extremely exciting dynamic to be a part of. And actually what I find is of the women that stay in technical roles, many of them have other sides to their personality that make them good leaders. So this is by all means not a sweeping generalizing statement. There are people of all profiles, of all genders. But I keep accidentally having women move into leadership roles on my team because they keep being the people who are good at organizing other people. So actually I had to go in and at one point I had all women as scrum masters, and somebody came to me and said, do you realize you have this? And I said, no, I didn't realize I had that. Maybe I should encourage some guys.